This is a story about bones. Bones that spoke after 2,000 years of silence. Bones that carry messages from the past to us today. A story about the secrets they revealed, secrets so profound they shook the foundations of history. Imagine it's one scorching afternoon at the end of the 19th century in China. In the heart of Beijing, nestled amidst bustling markets and ancient temples, stood a small Chinese medicine shop. It was an unassuming place, the kind you might pass by every day and not give a second thought. But if you had stepped inside that shop on that particular day, you might have witnessed something extraordinary. The shop's interior was dim, lit only by the soft glow of lanterns hanging from the ceiling. The air was heavy with the scent of dried herbs and roots, each carefully arranged on the wooden shelves. Among these everyday items lay something unusual, something that would change the course of history. Pale bone fragments, relics from a bygone era, were sold right alongside the common herbs. To the casual customer, they were just dragon bones, a rare medicinal ingredient. They were ground into powder and mixed with other ingredients to treat various ailments. There was nothing out of the ordinary about it. That's what the customers thought. They came, they bought the so-called dragon bones. They left without realizing they were holding pieces of the past in their hands. But a man named Wang, a local scholar, wasn't like the rest. He had come to the shop that day for a different reason. As he strolled through the aisles, his gaze fell upon those same bone fragments. And in that instant, everything changed. Something about the bones caught his attention. It wasn't just their age or rarity that intrigued him. No, it was something more. As Wang looked closer, he noticed unusual markings on the bones, strange symbols that seemed deliberate, not random. It was as if someone had taken great care to etch these signs onto the bones, leaving behind a message from beyond the grave. Wang couldn't believe what he was seeing. Is this just a curious coincidence? Or was there a hidden meaning behind these ancient symbols? Driven by an insatiable curiosity, he decided to investigate. This wasn't just a purchase for him anymore. It was the start of a journey back in time, a journey that would uncover secrets buried for centuries. He carefully selected a piece of bone, turning it over in his hands, tracing the mysterious markings. Each line, each curve held an untold story. With a pounding heart, he took his discovery to a renowned archaeologist, hoping for answers. The archaeologist examined the bone fragments, his face etched with concentration. Finally, he turned to Wang, his voice filled with wonder. "These are not ordinary bones," he said, his words echoing in the quiet room. "They are pieces of a forgotten language, a language that has remained hidden for thousands of years." As they delved deeper into the mystery, they realized that these bones were not just artifacts. They were witnesses to a lost civilization. They carried within them the whispers of a culture long vanished, offering a glimpse into a world that once thrived. The symbols they discovered were not random, but part of a sophisticated writing system, one that had laid dormant for millennia. With each bone fragment they uncovered, they pieced together fragments of a civilization that had been lost to time. They learned of a people who lived in a world on fire, who carried the voices of gods in their hearts. Their cities were vibrant, their culture rich, their lives intertwined with the rhythms of nature. They worshipped the heavens, seeking wisdom and guidance from the stars above. But their way of life was not without its challenges. The archaeologists and Wang, poring over ancient texts and deciphering cryptic symbols, unveiled a story of resilience and survival. They learned of a civilization that had endured natural disasters, wars and societal upheavals, yet had somehow managed to preserve its culture and traditions. As the pieces of the puzzle came together, they realized that this was no ordinary civilization. It was the Shang Dynasty, one of the earliest and most influential periods in Chinese history. The Shang had ruled over vast territories, shaping the course of ancient China. Yet their legacy had been shrouded in mystery, their history concealed beneath the sands of time. And now here they were, uncovering a civilization that had shaped the very foundations of Chinese society. They learned of kings who had led their people with wisdom and courage, of artisans who had created exquisite works of art, and of scholars who had advanced the knowledge of astronomy and medicine. They discovered a society that was not just powerful, but deeply philosophical, a culture that had grappled with questions of life, death, and the human condition. Yet their most profound revelation was still to come. For as they continued their investigation, they stumbled upon something that sent shockwaves through the academic world. The Shang civilization, they discovered, had possessed knowledge far beyond their time. Knowledge that challenged conventional historical narratives. They found evidence of their advanced understanding of astronomy, their ability to predict eclipses and navigate by the stars. They unearthed their sophisticated medical practices, their use of acupuncture and herbal remedies, and they uncovered their innovative technologies. Their mastery of metallurgy and their ability to produce exquisite works of art, but perhaps most astonishing of all was their connection to the wider world. The Shang, they discovered, had engaged in extensive trade networks, exchanging goods and ideas with civilizations as far away as Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley. They had been part of a global exchange of knowledge, a testament to the interconnectedness of human history. As the full scope of the Shang civilization revealed itself, Wang and the archaeologists realized that they were witnessing a paradigm shift in history. What they had stumbled upon was not just the remnants of an ancient dynasty, but evidence of a world that was far more complex and interconnected than previously imagined. Their discoveries challenged long-held assumptions, forcing historians to rewrite narratives and reconsider established theories. The academic community was shaken. Scholars who had dismissed the significance of ancient Chinese history were now reevaluating their perspectives, and all because of a chance discovery in a dusty old bookshop. As news of the discovery spread, the world took notice. Experts from around the globe descended on the site, eager to be part of the groundbreaking research. Museums and universities clamored for the bones, hoping to showcase them in their hallowed halls. But Wang and the archaeologists remained steadfast in their commitment to preserving the integrity of the discovery. They knew that these bones were not just relics of the past, they were fragments of a culture that deserved respect and reverence. So they chose to keep the excavation site open to the public, allowing visitors from around the world to witness the wonders of the Shang Dynasty firsthand. Amongst the crowds, there were skeptics, those who refused to believe that such an advanced civilization could have existed in ancient China. But the evidence was right there, tangible and irrefutable. The Shang civilization, with its sophisticated knowledge and vibrant culture, was a testament to the ingenuity of our ancestors. As the years passed, the excavation site became a hub of activity. Archaeologists unearthed more artifacts, each adding another layer to the rich tapestry of the Shang Dynasty. They discovered exquisite bronze vessels, each bearing intricate designs that told stories of their own. They found ancient tools, weapons, and ornaments, each reflecting the artistry of a bygone era. And then there were the oracle bones, thousands of them, each containing cryptic messages from a time long past. With each new discovery, the picture of the Shang civilization became more complete, their achievements more apparent. But the most profound impact of the discovery was yet to come. For as word of the Shang Dynasty spread, it sparked a cultural awakening in China. People from all walks of life became fascinated by their heritage, eager to learn more about their ancestors' remarkable achievements. The discovery of the Shang Dynasty became a source of national pride, reminding the Chinese people of their rich cultural legacy. It inspired a new generation of scholars, archaeologists, and historians, all eager to contribute to the ongoing saga of discovery. Today, the legacy of the Shang Dynasty lives on. The discovery of their civilization has revolutionized our understanding of ancient China. And the bones that started it all are displayed in museums around the world, serving as a constant reminder of the wonders that lie hidden in our past. Every crack, every fracture tells a story of a bygone era, whispering tales of a civilization that once thrived. And when we listen closely, we can hear their voices echoing through the ages, reminding us of the brilliance of our ancestors and the importance of preserving their legacy for future generations. So the next time you come across an ancient artifact, take a moment to appreciate its significance. For it may hold secrets that have the power to change our understanding of history and connect us to our ancestors in ways we never imagined possible. Why? Why is this shoulder blade so important? What's written on it? Today, let's find out together. To understand why these dragon bones were so important, we must travel over 3,000 years back in time to the land of Anyang, modern-day Henan province. Night had fallen, and the wind howled through the fields, carrying the scent of damp wood from the fire. In the center of the village, a piece of cow's shoulder blade was placed on a flat stone. Shamans, their bodies painted red, their eyes shining in the firelight, stood around it. They carved questions into the bone. Will it rain tomorrow? Will the war succeed? Will the queen bear a son? They waited for an answer. They waited for an answer because they believed that the spirits could tell them the future by manipulating the cracks that appeared in the bones when heated. The way the pieces broke was considered a sign from heaven, just like the way a magic 8-ball might answer yes or no to your questions. And since the Shang Dynasty valued these dragon bones so much, archaeologists have discovered hundreds of them. But why did the ancient Chinese carve questions on bones instead of asking the spirits directly? In order to become a powerful shaman, one must first spend many years in rigorous training, learning how to read the patterns of cracks. If you ask a question with an unclear answer, you may receive a vague reply. For example, if you asked, "Will it rain tomorrow?" the spirits might respond, "The water from the sky is falling." That answer would be too general because it doesn't specify whether it will rain tomorrow or the next day. Thus, shamans tried to craft the best possible questions. But even then, the spirits sometimes still gave them a hard time. The art of reading dragon bones is called qua, which means divination. Qua originated during the Shang Dynasty and was used to ask the spirits for advice on all matters, both big and small, from the fortune of a merchant's trading to whether the ruler would have a son. If you wanted an audience with the oracle, you'd have to bring a large team of oxen and wait until it was your turn. These oracles could become so popular that they were booked months in advance. Now you may wonder, where did these shamans get their powers from? According to legend, the Shang kings believed that they descended from a divine dragon. Therefore, they called themselves the dragon rulers. The dragon was a symbol of power, strength, and good fortune. It represented the connection between heaven and earth, and its bones were thought to hold great power. By heating up these bones, the shamans released the dragon's soul, which would then manipulate the cracks in the bone, revealing the future. The process of releasing the dragon's soul was very important. It wasn't just about asking a question and getting an answer. It was about connecting with the spiritual world and seeking guidance from the ancestors and the gods. In addition to shoulder blades, the bones of other animals, such as turtles and birds, were also used for divination. Each type of animal had its own method of questioning and interpreting the signs. But no matter what kind of bone was used, the purpose was always the same: to uncover the secrets of the future. During the Shang and Zhou dynasties, people believed that the dragon bones could not only predict the future, but also reveal the results of past events. This was known as the art of applying qua, which involved analyzing the patterns of cracks to determine the outcome of battles, the success of agricultural seasons, or the legitimacy of rulers. As China entered the spring and autumn and warring states periods, new methods of divination emerged. Oracle bones were replaced by techniques such as face reading, palm reading, and the Yi Ching, or Book of Changes. However, the legacy of the dragon bones lived on in Chinese culture. They became an important part of the country's rich history and an iconic symbol of its ancient traditions. Today, the dragon bones are displayed in museums and archaeological sites across China, allowing visitors to experience the magic and mystery of this ancient practice firsthand. Some people still believe that the dragon bones hold power, while others appreciate them as a fascinating glimpse into China's past. Whatever their beliefs, all who encounter these ancient artifacts are reminded of the profound influence of spirituality on human history. What do you think about these dragon bones? Let me know in the comments below. If you'd like this episode, please subscribe and leave a like. See you next time. Did you know that 5,000 years ago, there were no pens or pencils? Writing wasn't done with ink or even typewriters. It was done with bones. In fact, one of the earliest forms of writing was done with the bones of animals. These bones would have been used in a ceremony to communicate with the gods. But how did they do it? How did they write with bones? Let me tell you. Long ago, before paper and pencils were invented, people had to get creative with their writing tools. You wouldn't believe what they used. People would use things like animal bones, shells, and even stone tablets. But why bones? What made them so special? Bones were more than just a writing surface. They were a way to connect with the gods. You see, people believed that bones could hold the spirits of animals or even ancestors. By carving into a bone, they could release these spirits to carry their messages to the gods. Now imagine you re part of a small community, and you need to find out what the gods think about something important. Maybe whether or not to go to war, or where to find food. You would choose someone wise, someone who understood the ways of the gods, your shaman. The shaman would take an animal bone, usually from a cow, a sheep, or a pig, and start to carve into it. Each question carved into the bone was a hope, a fear, a decision that could determine the fate of an entire community. The answers they sought had to be important. Things like, when will the crops grow well again? Will our enemies attack us? Is there a better place for us to live? Questions like these were serious. The future of the whole tribe might depend on the answers. Then came the ritual. First, they would make a hole in the center of the bone. This hole was more than just a simple mark. It was a portal to the spirit world. Next, hot coals were placed over the hole. The flames licked the surface of the bone, and then it started to crack. With a sharp snap, the bone broke, and the sound echoed like a response from the world beyond. Can you imagine the suspense? The shaman leaned over, his eyes wide, his lips murmuring as if hearing a voice from another realm. Beside the crack, he carved more symbols. Some were the same as the ones he carved earlier, and some were new. Together, they formed the answer. It's the answer to the question that had been asked. This process wasn't just a way to get answers. It was a way to understand the will of the gods. These early forms of writing weren't like our writing today. They were more like a conversation with the gods. But they served an important purpose. They helped people understand their world and their place in it. These ancient writings were discovered in places like China, Mesopotamia, and Egypt, and they date back thousands of years. Imagine being an archaeologist unearthing these bones and trying to understand this way of communicating. It gives us a fascinating glimpse into how early humans interacted with the world around them. Now let's talk about those answers. What kind of things were they learning? Well, everything they needed to know, from the mundane to the mystical. They wanted to know about the weather, about planting crops, about their animals, and even their enemies. But they also wanted to know about more mystical things, like the stars and the afterlife. These bones became a way to understand the unknown, to make sense of the world's mysteries. So the next time you pick up a pen or pencil and write down your thoughts, remember that you're continuing a tradition that began thousands of years ago. A tradition that started with people looking up at the stars and asking questions, with shamans carving those questions into bones. It's a tradition that has lasted through countless civilizations and is still going strong today. Well, that's it for today. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more amazing content. Till next time, keep thinking outside the box and exploring the world around you. Who knows? You might just discover something amazing. Take care, and goodbye. Here's a story that's been bugging me for months. Back in November, there was a discovery at an archaeological site in China. You may have heard about it. Archaeologists uncovered a mass grave here that contains more than 6,000 skeletons. It's one of the largest mass graves ever found in China. But today we're not going to talk about the mass grave. We're actually going to talk about something much smaller. In fact, our story begins with something so small it was barely visible to the naked eye. Here's what happened. When modern archaeologists came to this site in the 1970s, they began carefully brushing dirt off these tiny fragments, cleaning them up, putting them under microscopes. And when they peered into those microscopes, they saw these strange lines, characters etched into small pieces of animal bone. At first, the team thought these might just be random scratches. Maybe some ancient artist just liked drawing lines. But after examining thousands and thousands of these fragments, archaeologists realized this was no accident. These weren't random scratches. These were chronicles, the first written records in Chinese history, and to this day we still don't know how they did it. For hundreds of years, historians have debated how the Shang Dynasty kept their records. How did they record events, collect data? Did they use some sort of early paper or papyrus? And if so, where is it now? Well, thanks to these bone fragments, we now know exactly what they used. They used everything. These fragments are called oracle bones, and they show us that the Shang Dynasty chronicled literally everything.
Ow.
The biggest collection of these oracle bones comes from a single site called Yingsu, right here in Anyang City. In total, archaeologists have uncovered tens of thousands of these fragments here. So many that it would take dozens of lifetimes to read through them all. Some of the fragments are no longer than a centimeter. Others are as long as your forearm. And these fragments come in all shapes and sizes. Some are from cattle bones, others from tortoise shells. But despite their size and shape, all of these fragments follow the same pattern. They have these raised lines written on them, and those lines form characters, and those characters make up a writing system. But before we go any further, let me answer a question that's probably on your mind. Why bones? Why didn't the Shang write on paper or clay tablets or stone? Well, the thing is, they kind of did write on those things. Paper, tablets, and stone were used for important documents, treaties, contracts, royal decrees. But the Shang also wrote on things that were more convenient, cheaper, easier to carry around. And those things, of course, included bone. Now, the Shang didn't carve these characters into the bones by hand. Instead, they used a special tool that looked kind of like a chisel. And here's how it worked. Archaeologists found bone fragments near furnaces. So it seems likely that the Shang heated these bones over a fire, then carved the characters while they were soft. Then they would put them in the furnace again, harden the bone, and that's how they got these grooves. And those grooves held all kinds of information. Over time, archaeologists have translated thousands of these inscriptions. We're starting to get a picture of what life was like during the Shang Dynasty. So I'm going to read you some of these inscriptions and see if I can recreate the world of the Shang. All right, here's one of the first inscriptions I found in my research. The king led 3,000 soldiers to fight the enemy. The next day, 500 prisoners were captured. This was probably recorded somewhere around 1300 BC, and we know two things about this battle. First, the Shang king won. And second, this wasn't a huge battle. 3,000 soldiers might sound impressive today, but back then, armies rarely had more than 10,000 men. So this was probably a pretty standard battle for the Shang. By the way, the Shang Dynasty fought a lot of wars. In fact, there's another inscription which reads, "The king conquers 9 or 10 nations every year." That's how the Shang viewed themselves, as supreme rulers, the center of the universe. And their job was to conquer everyone who disagreed with them. Okay, but writing about war isn't the only thing the Shang did. They also kept track of their economy. This one reads, "If it rains on the 10th, the rice will thrive. If it rains on the 20th, the rice will wither." These are the earliest known weather records in China. The Shang were farmers as well as warriors, and their success depended on the weather. So they tracked the weather constantly. Sometimes their predictions were correct. In another inscription, we can see that the Shang wrote down the date of a solar eclipse, and they predicted that the king would become ill. Then below that, there's another line saying that the eclipse was correct. It must have been quite a sight to see a solar eclipse back then. You'd probably think the sky itself was splitting apart. But besides agriculture and war, the Shang also recorded cultural events, like this one. A great hunt took place. A prince shot a large stag, but the king's brother shot an even larger one. Now, I don't know exactly why they were hunting stags, but I do know that the king's brother got bragging rights for a very long time. The Shang also kept track of family matters, births, deaths, marriages, things like that. Here's one that always makes me smile. "Lady, you gave birth to a boy." Here's the follow-up. "Lady, you gave birth to a girl." The king was overjoyed. So the Shang weren't just keeping track of major battles and harvests. They were taking note of everyday life, too. And that brings us to the final thing: the Shang documented astronomical events. Most of their recordings have to do with the moon. They used the moon to keep time, to count days, to tell the seasons, so they wrote down all kinds of lunar information. They recorded full moons, new moons, lunar eclipses, and because of this, we now know that the Shang Dynasty was the first to use a lunar calendar. That means that instead of starting a month when a new moon appeared, they waited until the next full moon. To start their month, this made planning difficult, especially when the moon didn't cooperate. One inscription says, "Wait another night and observe the moon again. Only then can we know whether it is a good day to begin farming." So the Shang Dynasty didn't just write about big events. They recorded everything, because they believed every detail mattered. And if you look at all these bones, it becomes clear that the Shang Dynasty didn't just want to know what was happening. They wanted to know everything that was happening. That's why they recorded the weather, to understand it better. That's why they followed the moon, to predict its phases. That's why they chronicled Lady Yu's children, to celebrate her happiness. In other words, the Shang Dynasty wasn't just recording information. They were making sense of the world. Just like us, they were curious about tomorrow, about whether they'd win the war, whether the harvest would be plentiful. In that sense, the Shang Dynasty wasn't that different from us. They were ordinary people trying to understand their world, trying to understand themselves. They left behind a treasure trove of information, a gift for the rest of humanity. And for that, we should all be grateful. Thank you for watching. These bones are not just ancient artifacts. They were once the property of kings. Back then, not just anyone could access these bone fragments. Only the king and the shamans had the authority to ask the gods. What kind of questions did they ask? Well, you can imagine the possibilities. When the king read the cracks in the bones, he wasn't just interpreting an oracle. He was making decisions based on divine will. This meant that writing was not merely a tool for communication, it was a source of power. And those who controlled it could influence the very fate of the nation. These answers didn't just guide the future of the royal court, they shaped the destiny of entire kingdoms. All because of these bones. This is 1 Minute. I'll see you tomorrow. Writing, at this time, wasn't just a tool, it was a sacred, powerful thing, connecting the earthly realm with the divine. And because of this, only a select few had access to it. The shaman and the king weren't just leaders, they were interpreters of the divine. The only ones capable of decoding the messages from the gods. When the shaman wrote, they were seen as channeling the spirits directly onto the page, moving the needle of fate for the kingdom. Their words held such power that they could influence the weather, the outcome of battles, even the prosperity of the land. In a world where literacy was rare, the shaman's words were like spells, commanding the very forces of nature. They were the architects of reality, shaping the world according to the will of the gods. But this power came at a price. For the shaman to channel these otherworldly messages, they had to undergo intense training, often in isolation, enduring harsh conditions to prove their dedication. Even then, they had to be constantly vigilant, for the line between the earthly and the divine was thin, and the shaman could easily be consumed by the very powers they were trying to harness. Meanwhile, the king, too, had a unique connection to the written word. His scribes, the royal chroniclers, were tasked with recording the deeds of the king and his ancestors, creating a lineage of heroes that inspired awe and loyalty. These scribes weren't just writers, they were historians, myth-makers, carefully crafting each stroke of their brush to ensure the king's legacy would endure through the ages. Yet despite the reverence surrounding writing, there was a growing unease among the populace. The shaman's cryptic messages, once revered, now seemed to be veering out of control. Their predictions of war and famine were coming true with terrifying accuracy. The people began to question if the shaman were truly interpreting the will of the gods, or if their power had corrupted them, causing the very disasters they were supposed to prevent. As the king surveyed his kingdom, he saw the people's fear and knew he had to act. He summoned the shaman, demanding they prove their divine right to their power. But the shaman, shrouded in their mystical ways, refused to comply. This defiance only fueled the king's suspicions, leading him to believe that the shaman had become a conduit for chaos. A belief that would eventually lead to a cataclysmic showdown between the king and the shaman, a battle that would determine the fate of the kingdom and the very essence of their world. This is a story about the world's first literacy crisis. To learn more about what sparked this crisis and how it ended, stay tuned for more information. The ancient bones lay silent, their secrets hidden for millennia. But as the archaeologists' brush gently swept away the dust, something unexpected emerged. Etched into the weathered surface, delicate characters began to reveal themselves. The researchers' heart raced. This was no ordinary find. As the team carefully excavated, more and more inscribed bones came to light. At first glance, they seemed to tell grand tales of battles won and lost, of kings rising and falling. But there was something else here, something that made these bones truly extraordinary. It wasn't just the epic events they recorded that captivated the researchers. As they pored over the ancient script, they discovered something far more intimate and profound. These bones preserved ordinary moments from lives lived thousands of years ago. One shaman had carved an account of a deer hunt, describing in detail how he tracked the animal through dense forest. Another bone bore anxious musings about an ongoing drought, the writer clearly concerned about the impact on crops and livestock. Perhaps most surprisingly, One inscription mentions someone suffering from a toothache in the royal palace. These seemingly mundane details, when etched onto bone, became part of an enduring historical record. They offered a window into the everyday concerns and experiences of people who lived millennia ago. Imagine for a moment if these bones had never been discovered. We might never have known that people from 3,000 years in the past worried about their teeth aching, just as we do today. We might never have realized they felt deep concern for their children's well-being, or feared crop failures that could lead to hunger.
Oh.
In that moment of realization, everything changes. These were not primitive, unintelligent people fumbling through a brutish existence. They were keen observers of the world around them. They questioned what they saw and sought to understand it. In short, they were remarkably like us. The bones reveal a society grappling with the same fundamental human experiences we face today. They show people striving to make sense of their world, to find meaning in both the extraordinary and the mundane. Consider the shaman's account of the deer hunt. It wasn't just a dry recitation of facts. The carving conveyed the excitement of the chase, the hunter's skill in tracking his prey, and perhaps even a sense of reverence for the animal that would sustain his people. This wasn't just about obtaining food. It was about connecting with nature and continuing ancient traditions. The drought inscription tells us of a community deeply attuned to the rhythms of the natural world. The writer's concern reflects not just personal anxiety, but a shared worry about the well-being of the entire society. It shows us a people who understood their dependence on the land and the fragility of their existence. What of the toothache in the palace? This small detail humanizes figures we might otherwise view as remote and godlike. Even the most powerful were not immune to the everyday discomforts that plague us all. It's a reminder that beneath the trappings of royalty beat hearts that felt pain just like ours. As researchers continued to study the bones, more and more such details emerged. They found accounts of children's first words, of lovers' quarrels, of elders passing down wisdom to the next generation. Each inscription added another thread to the rich tapestry of ancient life. These bones challenge our preconceptions about the past. They force us to confront the fact that the people who lived thousands of years ago were not so different from us. They loved, they feared, they hoped, they dreamed. They faced challenges and celebrated triumphs. They sought to understand their place in the universe. The inscriptions reveal a society with a complex understanding of the world. They show people grappling with philosophical questions, pondering the nature of existence, and seeking to explain natural phenomena. These were not the musings of simple minds, but the products of deep, critical thinking. Moreover, the very act of recording these thoughts and experiences unbone speaks to a profound desire to preserve knowledge for future generations. These ancient scribes understood the importance of memory, of passing down both practical information and cultural heritage. As we delve deeper into the inscriptions, we begin to see patterns emerge. We can trace the development of ideas, the evolution of religious beliefs, the changing dynamics of social structures. The bones become not just individual snapshots, but a continuous narrative of a civilization in flux. This realization opens up entirely new avenues of research. Historians and archaeologists now have a wealth of new data to analyze, offering fresh insights into ancient societies. Linguists can study the evolution of language, tracing how words and grammatical structures changed over time. But perhaps most importantly, these bones offer us a chance to connect with our distant ancestors on a deeply human level. We can see ourselves reflected in their hopes, fears, and daily struggles. We can recognize the common thread of humanity that binds us across the millennia. As we continue to study these remarkable artifacts, we're forced to reevaluate our understanding of history. We must abandon outdated notions of primitive cultures and recognize the sophistication and complexity of ancient societies. We must approach the past with humility, acknowledging how much we still have to learn. The bones remind us that history is not just a series of grand events, but the accumulated experiences of countless individuals. Each life, no matter how seemingly ordinary, contributes to the grand tapestry of human existence. In preserving these everyday moments, the bones give voice to those who might otherwise have been lost to time. As we close this chapter of discovery, we're left with a profound sense of connection to the past. These ancient bones, with their intimate glimpses into long-ago lives, have bridged the gap of millennia. They've shown us that across vast stretches of time and space, the essence of what it means to be human remains unchanged. And so, as we carefully preserve these precious artifacts for future generations, we're not just safeguarding historical relics, we're honoring the shared human experience that connects us all, past, present, and future. In doing so, we ensure that the voices of our ancestors, etched in bone, will continue to speak to us for centuries to come. The bones whispered secrets, ancient and foreboding. As the oracle's hands trembled, tracing the intricate cracks etched by time and flame, a chill swept through the sacred chamber. These were not mere relics of the past. They were windows into a future shrouded in uncertainty. But these bones also contained something darker, not just hope, but warnings from the gods. Some bones described failed rituals, their jagged lines speaking of offerings rejected and prayers unanswered. Others bore witness to famines that ravaged the land, their surfaces scarred with the desperation of a starving people. And still others murmured of unrest, of whispers in the night, and plots against the throne. These cold, harsh writings reminded us that even though we could ask the gods for blessings, the future was never guaranteed. The cracks in the bones were not always messages of triumph, they were also messages of doom. Each fracture, each fissure, held the potential for catastrophe, a stark reminder of the fragility of human ambition. And these messages weren't just about the kings and the gods. Some bones warned of the fall of dynasties, of the eventual destruction of the Shanga. Each crack was a prelude to a grander tragedy, a harbinger of upheavals yet to come. The oracle bones spoke of empires crumbling, of great cities reduced to dust, and of bloodlines ending in the cruel twist of fate. Writing, as it turned out, not only recorded the victories, but also the inevitable defeats. The very act of inscribing these prophecies seemed to give them weight, to breathe life into the fears that lurked in the shadows of every heart. The scribes, with trembling hands, etched the words that could seal the fate of nations. As the flames flickered in the dim chamber, casting eerie shadows on the walls, the weight of these prophecies hung heavy in the air. The oracle, eyes wide with the terrible knowledge gleaned from the bones, struggled to find the words to convey the gravity of what had been revealed. For generations, the people had looked to these bones for guidance, for reassurance in times of uncertainty. They had celebrated the favorable omens, the promises of bountiful harvests, and victorious battles. But now, faced with the stark reality of these darker prophecies, a sense of unease began to spread. The king, seated upon his golden throne, leaned forward, his brow furrowed with concern. He had always known that power was a double-edged sword, but never before had the precariousness of his position been so clearly laid bare. The bones spoke of rebellion, of whispers in the night that could grow into roars of defiance. In the streets below, life continued, as it always had. Merchants hawked their wares, children played in the dusty alleys, and the smell of incense wafted from the temples. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, a current of tension began to flow. Word of the oracle's dire predictions spread like wildfire, each retelling more ominous than the last. The priests, guardians of the sacred knowledge, found themselves torn. On one hand, they were bound by duty to interpret the will of the gods, to share the wisdom contained within the oracle bones. On the other, they feared the consequences of spreading panic among the people. Would revealing these dark prophecies hasten their fulfillment? In the fields beyond the city walls, farmers paused in their labors, squinting at the horizon. The bones had spoken of famine, of crops withering in the fields, and livestock dying in their pens. As they wiped the sweat from their brows, they wondered if each cloud held the promise of rain or the threat of drought. Back in the palace, advisors huddled in hushed conference, debating the best course of action. Some argued for increased sacrifices, for grander rituals to appease the gods and avert disaster. Others advocated for more practical measures, stockpiling grain, reinforcing defenses, and rooting out any seeds of dissent. The king, listening to their arguments, felt the weight of the crown more keenly than ever before. He had always known that ruling was a burden, but now it felt like a noose tightening around his neck. Every decision, every decree, could be the one that sealed the fate of his dynasty. As night fell over the kingdom, an uneasy quiet settled over the land. In homes and taverns, in barracks and temples, people spoke in whispers of what the future might hold. The oracle bones had always been a source of guidance, a way to peek behind the veil of time. But now, that veil seemed darker, more impenetrable than ever before. In the depths of the night, as most of the city slept, a small group gathered in secret. They were the keepers of the oldest traditions, the guardians of knowledge passed down through generations. They knew that the oracle bones were not just tools of divination, but repositories of history itself. With careful hands, they unrolled ancient scrolls and pored over faded inscriptions. They sought patterns in the chaos, hoping to find some thread of hope amidst the dire predictions. For they knew that knowledge was power, and that understanding the past was the key to shaping the future. As the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, a sense of resolve began to take hold. The oracle bones had spoken of challenges to come, of trials that would test the very foundations of their society. But they had also spoken of resilience, of the enduring spirit of a people who had faced adversity before and emerged stronger. The king rose from his restless slumber, his mind made up. He would not cower in the face of these prophecies, nor would he ignore them. Instead, he would face them head-on, rallying his people to prepare for whatever the future might hold. In the streets, as the city began to stir, there was a new energy in the air. The initial fear and uncertainty were giving way to determination. If hard times were coming, they would face them together, drawing strength from their shared history and the wisdom of their ancestors. The oracle bones, those ancient harbingers of both hope and doom, had served their purpose. They had reminded the people of the Shang that the future was not set in stone, that it was shaped by the actions of the present. And as the sun rose higher in the sky, casting its warm light over the kingdom, a new chapter in their history began to unfold. The cracks in the bones had spoken of challenges, but also of opportunities. They had warned of the fall of dynasties, but in doing so, had given the people a chance to write their own destiny. For in the end, it was not the prophecies themselves that would determine the fate of the Shang, but how they chose to respond to them. And so, as the day began in earnest, the people of the Shang set about their tasks with renewed purpose. The farmers tended their fields with greater care, the soldiers trained with increased vigor, and the scholars pored over ancient texts with newfound intensity. They knew that the future, with all its uncertainties and possibilities, was theirs to shape. The oracle bones, those silent witnesses to the ebb and flow of history, lay quiet once more. But their message lingered, a reminder that in the great tapestry of time, every thread has its purpose, every crack its meaning. And as the Shang faced the dawn of a new era, they did so with the knowledge that they were not just inheritors of a great legacy, but authors of their own destiny. In the depths of an ancient tomb, a team of archaeologists stumbled upon a discovery that would change everything. As the dust settled, their flashlights illuminated something unexpected. Bones, but not just any bones. These were etched with intricate markings, a silent testimony to a long-forgotten civilization. The air grew thick with anticipation as the team carefully extracted the fragile remains. Little did they know, they were about to unravel a mystery that had been buried for millennia. With each passing moment, the tension in the cramped chamber intensified, hearts racing as they realized the magnitude of what lay before them. As the lead archaeologist gently brushed away the last remnants of soil, a collective gasp echoed through the tomb. The markings on the bones weren't random scratches. They were deliberate, purposeful. It was writing, but unlike anything they had ever seen before. In that moment, time seemed to stand still. The weight of history pressed down upon them, and a sense of regret washed over the team. How many other treasures had been lost to time, overlooked or destroyed? But as quickly as it came, the feeling passed, replaced by an overwhelming excitement. This was just the beginning of a journey that would take them deeper into the past than they had ever dared to imagine. When we look at these bones, we don't just see writing. We see life itself, in all its hope, fear, triumph, and failure. The cracks in the bones represent the eternal struggle of humanity, to survive, to conquer, and to record our stories. Each etched line tells a tale of perseverance, of a people determined to leave their mark on the world. As the team carefully cataloged their find, they couldn't help but marvel at the ingenuity of our ancestors. In a world without paper or ink, they had turned to the very essence of life, bone. to preserve their thoughts and experiences. It was a stark reminder of the lengths humans will go to ensure their voices are heard, even across the vast expanse of time. The bones spoke of great hunts and fierce battles, of love and loss, of triumphs and tragedies. They whispered of a society that valued knowledge and sought to pass it down through generations. In the delicate grooves carved into calcified tissue, the team could almost hear the echoes of ancient voices, determined to be remembered. But the writing wasn't just a record of past events. It was a bridge, connecting the present to a distant past that had long been shrouded in mystery. As the archaeologists pored over the bones, deciphering the ancient script, they began to piece together a picture of a civilization that had been lost to time. The cracks in the bones told their own story, of hardship, of struggle, of a people pushed to the brink of extinction. Yet even in the face of overwhelming odds, they had persevered. The very act of writing on bone was a testament to their resilience, their unwavering desire to leave something behind that would outlast their mortal bodies. With each new discovery, the team's understanding of this ancient culture grew. They began to see patterns in the writing, to understand the nuances of a language that had been silent for thousands of years. It was as if the bones themselves were coming to life, revealing secrets long held in their calcified embrace. The power of writing, from its humble origins in the cracks of bone, has lasted through millennia, carrying the voices of the past to the present. It's a testament to the enduring nature of human communication, to our innate desire to connect with one another across the barriers of time and space. As the team worked tirelessly to unlock the secrets of the bone writing, they couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. They were not just archaeologists uncovering artifacts. They were time travelers, bridging the gap between past and present. With each new revelation, they were rewriting history, challenging long-held assumptions about the development of human civilization. The bones told of a society far more advanced than anyone had previously imagined. They spoke of astronomical observations, complex mathematical calculations, and philosophical musings that rivaled those of the great ancient civilizations. It was clear that this was no primitive culture, but one that had reached great heights of knowledge and understanding. Yet as the team delved deeper into the writings, they also uncovered tales of great tragedy. The bones spoke of natural disasters, of wars and famines that had pushed this once great civilization to the brink of collapse. It was a sobering reminder of the fragility of human achievement, of how quickly all that we build can be swept away by the tides of time. But even in the face of such adversity, the human spirit had endured. The very existence of these bone writings was proof of that. In their darkest hour, when all seemed lost, our ancestors had chosen to leave behind a record of their existence, a final defiant act against the oblivion of time. As news of the discovery spread, the world watched in fascination. Scholars from every corner of the globe flocked to the site, eager to contribute to the unraveling of this ancient mystery. The bone writings became a symbol of our shared human heritage, a reminder that despite our differences, we are all part of a grand, unbroken chain of history. The impact of the discovery reached far beyond the academic world, sparked a renewed interest in ancient cultures and languages, inspiring a new generation of explorers and researchers. People began to look at the world around them with fresh eyes, wondering what other secrets might be hiding in plain sight, waiting to be uncovered. These bones are not just remnants of an ancient civilization, they are memories that refuse to die. They are a testament to the indomitable human spirit, to our endless curiosity, and our relentless pursuit of knowledge. In the delicate etchings on these ancient bones, we see a reflection of ourselves, our hopes, our fears, our dreams. As the sun set on another day of painstaking research, the team of archaeologists stood back and marveled at their discovery. They had unlocked a door to the past, and in doing so, had changed our understanding of human history forever. The bone writings were more than just an archaeological find. They were a bridge across time, connecting us to our distant ancestors in ways we had never thought possible. In the quiet of the evening, as the last rays of sunlight filtered through the dusty air of the tomb, the team couldn't help but wonder, what other secrets were still waiting to be discovered? What other voices from the past were crying out to be heard? The journey of discovery that had begun with these ancient bones was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. As they carefully packed away their equipment for the night, Each member of the team felt a sense of profound gratitude. They had been given a rare gift, the chance to touch the past, to hear the voices of those long gone. And with that gift came a responsibility, to share these ancient words with the world, to ensure that the memories etched into these bones would live on for generations to come. The bone writings had opened up a new chapter in human history, one that promised to rewrite everything we thought we knew about our past. But more than that, they had reminded us of our shared humanity, of the unbroken thread that connects us all across the vast expanse of time. In the end, that was perhaps their greatest gift, the knowledge that we are all part of something greater than ourselves, a grand tapestry of human experience that stretches back to the very dawn of civilization. As the team left the tomb that night, they carried with them not just ancient artifacts, but a renewed sense of purpose. They had become the guardians of a forgotten world, tasked with bringing its stories back to life. And as they stepped out into the cool night air, they could unhelp but feel that they were standing on the threshold of something truly extraordinary, a journey into the past, which shape our understanding of the future. In the 1970s, archaeologists in China made a discovery that was destined to rewrite history. They found tens of thousands of animal bones with mysterious markings. At first, they thought these might be random scratches, but after further study, researchers realized something amazing. These marks were not random at all. They were chronicles, the earliest known written records of China. Welcome to my channel. Today, let us explore how archaeologists cracked this ancient code and how their discovery forever changed our understanding of Chinese history. The year was 1976 when archaeologists unearthed a large collection of tortoise shells and animal bones at the site of an ancient city in the Inyang region. This city was the capital of the Shang Dynasty, which had flourished here around 3,000 years ago. The Shang rulers considered themselves the sons of the dragon, and they believed their bloodline could be traced back to the mythical emperor Shen Nong. By the 14th century BC, however, their reign had come to an end, and much of their history had been lost to time. As archaeologists carefully examined these bones, they noticed a series of patterns and symbols etched onto them. These markings turned out to be the very first written records in Chinese history. So what did these ancient texts reveal about the Shang Dynasty? Let's take a closer look. One of the most intriguing aspects of these bone inscriptions is the way they were created. During the Shang Dynasty, the art of writing had not yet been invented. Instead, the scribes would carve the characters by puncturing holes through the bones using a special tool called a jia. This jia looked like an awl, but it was heavier and sharper than those used for sewing. With this tool, they would make a hole for each character. Each hole represented a single word or idea. Sometimes a single bone could have dozens of characters, forming entire sentences. Now you may be wondering why they chose to write on bones. Well, in Chinese culture, certain animals held deep significance. For instance, the oryx was associated with divination, and its bones were believed to be able to capture messages from the gods. To get these messages, the priests would place the bones over a fire until they cracked, then interpret the cracks as divine guidance. Meanwhile, tortoise shells were prized for their natural geometric patterns. Before making any important decisions, leaders would consult the spirits by burning incense and asking questions. These ancient Chinese practices show a fascinating connection between early humans and the natural world. Just as oracles and shamans have long held a prominent place in many cultures, early Chinese society sought guidance and insight from the natural world around them. By reading the patterns in tortoise shells and animal bones, they attempted to understand the messages of the gods and predict future outcomes. But what do these ancient writings tell us about the lives of the Shang people? Surprisingly, they provide a wealth of information about their daily lives. Through these inscriptions, we gain insight into various aspects of their culture, including their wars, agricultural practices, trade, religion, and family life. It's like reading a diary from the past, except instead of one person's thoughts, we're privy to the collective experiences of an entire civilization. One type of record that stands out is the documentation of wars. These accounts offer a glimpse into the military strategies and tactics employed by the Shang army. One such record reads, "The king led 3,000 soldiers to attack the enemy. The next day, 500 prisoners were captured." These lines paint a picture of large-scale battles and the significant losses and gains that occurred during wartime. It's fascinating to see how these ancient rulers kept track of their victories and conquests through these bone inscriptions. But it's not all about warfare. The writings also provide details about more mundane aspects of life, such as weather patterns and agricultural practices. For example, there's a record that says, "If it rains on the 10th, the rice will flourish." This simple statement shows how closely the Shang people observed the natural world around them. They understood the importance of rainfall for their crops and kept track of these patterns to ensure the success of their harvest. It's a reminder of the deep connection between early societies and the land they inhabited. Moving on, let's discuss the most remarkable aspect of these bone inscriptions: their sheer volume. The sheer number of bones inscribed with text makes them a treasure trove of historical information. In total, archaeologists have discovered over 100,000 pieces of inscribed material dating back to the Shang Dynasty. This includes over 1,000 pieces from Yingsu alone, which is truly staggering. What makes this even more impressive is that the Shang Dynasty lasted for only about 250 years. That means that the rate of inscription was incredibly high, with countless bones being inscribed with valuable historical information within a relatively short span of time. This abundance of records provides an unparalleled opportunity to study and understand this ancient civilization. For example, one of the most compelling uses of these bone inscriptions is the reconstruction of a royal genealogy. Through the careful examination of these records, historians have been able to piece together the lineage of Shang rulers, shedding light on the succession of power during this era. By tracing the family tree of the Shang kings, researchers have gained a better understanding of the political structure and societal norms of the time period. They can analyze how power was transferred, the roles of consorts and heirs, and the dynamics within the royal court. This genealogical reconstruction has not only enhanced our knowledge of the Shang dynasty, but also provided insights into broader patterns of inheritance and social organization in ancient China. Another fascinating application of the bone inscriptions is in the study of ancient rituals and ceremonies. These records provide invaluable information about the religious beliefs and practices of the Shang people. By analyzing the descriptions of rituals and sacrifices inscribed on the bones, scholars can reconstruct the complex religious system that played a significant role in Shang society. They can examine the deities that were worshipped, the rituals that were performed, and the social context surrounding these religious practices. This in turn sheds light on the cultural values, beliefs, and worldview of the Shang dynasty, giving us a deeper understanding of their society. And finally, the bone inscriptions also offer glimpses into the economy and trade networks of the Shang dynasty. Through the analysis of these records, researchers can identify the goods, resources, and products that were traded, as well as the routes and networks involved in these exchanges. By studying the economic activities described in the inscriptions, scholars can reconstruct the extent and complexity of the Shang's engagement in trade, which helps us understand their level of economic development and their interactions with other cultures. It's hard to overstate the impact that these bone inscriptions have had on our understanding of Chinese history. They provide an unparalleled window into the Shang dynasty, allowing us to explore their customs, beliefs, and everyday life. As scholars continue to decipher and analyze these ancient records, we can expect to uncover even more fascinating insights into this enigmatic civilization. So the next time you stumble upon an old diary or letter, take a moment to appreciate the power of written records to preserve history and shape our understanding of the past. Who knows, maybe someday your words will also become a source of fascination and discovery for future generations. What are your thoughts? What surprised you the most about the Shang dynasty's bone inscriptions? What other archaeological discoveries have fascinated you? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Before we part ways, if you've enjoyed this journey through history, I invite you to hit that subscribe button. Join our growing community of history enthusiasts and stay informed about our latest explorations. Your support means the world to me, and I can't wait to share more captivating stories with you soon. Until then, take care and keep exploring the wonders of our shared human past. Have you ever come across an old, dusty book in your attic and wondered about the stories it could tell? Well, imagine if that book was more than just pages filled with words. What if it held secrets about ancient beliefs and rituals from a time long ago? In today's episode, we're going back in time to explore how people used to believe that their gods would answer their questions through books, specifically through the mysterious cracks in animal bones. Let's start our journey by stepping into the shoes of someone living in ancient times. Back then, life was a lot different. People didn't have smartphones or Google to find answers instantly. They looked to the skies, the stars, and even the patterns on animal bones for guidance. You might be thinking, why would they see messages from gods in bone cracks? Let's dig a little deeper. In those days, reading wasn't something everyone could do. It was like having a superpower. Only a chosen few, often shamans or priests, could unlock the secrets hidden between the lines. For many ancient cultures, including the Inca, Maya, and the Chinese, written characters weren't just shapes on a page. They were signs sent by their gods. These signs, also called oracles, were believed to carry prophecies and advice for those who knew how to read them. But here's where things get really interesting. It wasn't just any book that held these sacred messages. It was special books made from the bones of animals like turtles and birds. These bones weren't just ordinary bones. They were thought to be vessels carrying the spirits of the animals after they died. And when these bones were cracked open, they revealed patterns that were like secret codes. These codes were not random. They were believed to be deliberate messages from the gods, trying to communicate with humans. You might wonder, why would gods choose bones to send their messages? Well, think about it. Back then, people didn't have fancy gadgets or ways to predict the future. They needed help understanding what their gods were trying to tell them. Bones seemed like a good way to get messages across, because they were easy to read and understand. Also, cracking bones was a common practice in some cultures. Before eating them, people would carefully break the shells or bones and examine them for these special marks. It was like a mini treasure hunt for ancient people. Every crack and line told them something about the animal's life, its age, and sometimes even hints about the future. These bone fragments were not accessible to just anyone. Only the king and the shamans had the authority to ask the gods. This meant that writing was not merely a tool for communication, it was a source of power. So let's take a closer look at who these important figures were and what they did. Shamans were not just regular people. They were kind of like doctors, spiritual advisors, and magicians all in one. Shamans were super important in many ancient societies. They were the ones who could talk to the dead, heal the sick, and protect their communities from harm. They were like the superheroes of their time. Shamans had special powers and knowledge. They could use special plants and tools to make medicines, tell the future, and even control the weather. They were like the detectives of the past, always searching for clues and signs. They looked for patterns in nature, like the flight of birds or the shape of clouds. They also used tools like seashells and mirrors to try to see the future. If you wanted to speak to your ancestors or ask for help against an illness, you would go to the shaman. They were the experts in the spiritual world and the helpers of the people. The king, on the other hand, was the leader of the entire nation. He wasn't just a regular boss. He was considered to be chosen by the gods. This meant that his job was super important. He had to make decisions that would affect everyone in his kingdom. He had to keep everyone safe, make sure there was enough food, and also solve problems when they arose. Kings were like the captains of a ship. They had to navigate through stormy seas and calm waters to keep their kingdom thriving. Now, both the shaman and the king had a big responsibility. They had to interpret the messages from the gods. They had to figure out what the gods were trying to say, and then act accordingly. This wasn't easy, though. Imagine being in charge of an entire nation and having to make decisions based on secret messages from the gods. It's a lot of pressure. So how exactly did these readers interpret the cracks in the bones? Well, first, they would get the bones ready. This meant cleaning them carefully and making sure they were free from any damage. Next, they would arrange the bones in a special way, often in the shape of a turtle or a bird. This was a sign of respect to the animal whose bones they were examining. After this, they would focus their minds and ask the gods for guidance. This could be about anything from the weather to important decisions about the kingdom. Once they had asked their question, they would wait patiently for an answer. Then, carefully examining the bones, they would look for patterns and markings. Each line and curve was like a secret symbol. And with experience, they learned to understand their meaning. For example, certain lines could mean danger or good fortune. Cross-shaped cracks could signify important events. Putting all these pieces together, they could form a complete message. It was like solving a puzzle, but instead of pieces, they were dealing with pieces of advice from the gods. Now, this wasn't just a one-person job. Sometimes the shamans would work with the kings, helping them understand the messages from the gods. Together, they would decide how to act based on the signs they saw. This way, the king wasn't alone in making important choices. He had the shamans to help him understand what the gods wanted. When the king read the cracks in the bones, he wasn't just interpreting an oracle. He was making decisions based on divine will. The answers did not just guide the royal court, they shaped the very fate of the nation. At this time, writing was more than just a tool, it was a sacred, powerful thing, linking the world of humans with the realm of the gods. Only a select few shamans and the king could read and understand these bones. The king and the shamans were not just rulers, they were interpreters of the divine, the only ones capable of decoding the will of the gods. Now, you might be wondering what happened when the messages from the bones were bad news. Well, that's a great question. No one likes hearing bad news, especially when it comes from the gods. But the shamans and the kings were trained to handle all kinds of messages, good or bad. When they got messages that people didn't like, they tried to find ways to make things better. For instance, if the bones said that there would be a famine, they would work hard to store food and help people in need. Or if there was a message about an enemy attack, they would prepare the kingdom's defenses and try to make everyone safer. It wasn't easy, but they took it seriously because they wanted to do what the gods wanted them to do. Okay, now let's chat about something really interesting. Have you ever heard of the Oracle of Delphi? It was like one of the most famous prophecy places in the ancient world. Imagine living in a time when people traveled far and wide to hear what the gods might be saying about their future. That's exactly what happened at the Oracle of Delphi. It was a place where people went to get messages from the gods. But hold on. There was a twist. The messages weren't written in an ordinary book. They were shared through the mouth of a person. Yep, you heard it right. A person could speak the words of the gods. How cool is that? Now you're probably wondering, how did they do it? Well, here's the fascinating part. The person who delivered these messages was in a trance-like state. Yep, they kind of entered another state of mind. This allowed the god or gods to influence them and speak through their lips. Imagine sitting there listening to someone speak in a strange, otherworldly voice, sharing secrets of the future. It would be quite a sight. And here's something even cooler. The Oracle of Delphi was so important that people from all over the ancient world traveled to this place to hear what the gods had to say. They wanted to know about their future, about important events that might happen. It was like a pilgrimage to a special place, where the boundaries between the human world and the world of the gods seemed to be thin. As we wrap up our journey into the ancient world of talking bones and mystical oracles, let's take a moment to think about how people used to seek guidance from the divine. We've explored how shamans and kings interpreted the cracks in animal bones as messages from the gods. And we've marveled at the enigmatic Oracle of Delphi, where the veil between the earthly and the otherworldly seemed to disappear. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Do you find these ancient beliefs and practices fascinating, or maybe a bit puzzling? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're still thirsty for more adventures in history, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Who knows? You might just uncover secrets of the past that will leave you in awe. Thanks for joining me on this journey through time. Keep asking questions and keep exploring, because the past holds wonders that continue to amaze us today. Till next time, keep being curious and keep seeking those answers that lie hidden in the cracks of ancient bones. Who knows? You might just find your own path to understanding the whispers of the gods. There are some places in the world where if you dig down a few feet into the ground, you can find animal bones. There's lots of them. And sometimes those bones are marked with mysterious symbols and patterns that humans drew thousands of years ago. That's right. Thousands of years ago, people were drawing on bones. Hi, it's me and this is my channel. When archaeologists uncovered the 9,000-year-old site of Xianrendong, they found plenty of bones from wild animals that had been butchered for food. But they also found bones from domesticated animals like dogs and pigs. Many of those bones had markings on them, including one pig bone that was marked all over with crisscross lines. At first, archaeologists thought the markings could have come from ancient tools or natural things like rocks or sticks. But after studying these markings, they realized that they weren't random, and they were almost certainly made by humans. The lines were too precise, and they appeared to follow patterns that matched the shapes of the bones. Xianrendong was a huge archaeological find. It showed us that people lived in the area 9,000 years ago, but that wasn't the only thing that was remarkable about it. Archaeologists also found bones that had been used as talismans, tools, and even toys. It found a canine skull that had been split open and filled with pebbles. Some of the long bones had holes drilled into them, which means that they may have been used as counting tools. And they discovered a bare femur that had been fashioned into a makeshift hammer. But what really made Xianrendong remarkable was that these weren't the only markings humans left behind on bones. They also scratched pictures and patterns onto them. They made incisions into bones in the shape of animals like deer and pigs and birds. They even etched geometric shapes like triangles and zigzags. They carved spirals and lines and dots, and some of the bones were covered with hundreds of tiny markings. Some of the carvings are abstract, and we don't know exactly what they mean, but others show us more concrete things, like how people in prehistoric times hunted deer. Scientists know that between 14,000 and 8,000 years ago, humans in China hunted a type of wild ox. The bones from those animals have been found all over China, and many of them have markings that appear to depict the animals being butchered. But at Xianrendong, scientists found a reindeer bone with a picture of a human handprint stamped into it. That carving shows the moment that a hunter pressed his palm into the reindeer's body while he was skinning it. Another bone has the outlines of two hands clasping each other, which may symbolize the joining of two clans when two people got married. What makes these bones so remarkable isn't just the grand events they record, they also preserve ordinary moments. One shaman carved about hunting deer, another recorded concerns about a drought, one recorded someone having a toothache in the royal palace. These seemingly trivial details, when inscribed onto bone, become part of a lasting record. They tell us that people 3,000 years ago were just as concerned about their teeth as we are. They cared for their children and feared their crops would fail just like we do. In fact, there's one carving on this deer bone that shows a small detail of a deer's anatomy. It shows us that the prehistoric artist who carved it knew exactly what kind of animal he was depicting. He didn't just draw a generic animal or a creature from his imagination. He drew a deer with anatomical accuracy. This suggests that this person spent time observing deer and may have even hunted them before. This is evidence of intelligence, observation, and an understanding of the world around them. It shows that they weren't primitive and unintelligent as some people believe. But let's take a step back here. What exactly is Xianrendong? How did this site reveal itself to the world? In 2003, locals in Jiangxi province were digging a well when they hit something hard. They kept digging, and eventually they hit something even harder, a rock. So they called the police to see if maybe there was a crime scene nearby. Maybe someone had buried something valuable and then hid it under a rock to hide it. But that wasn't the case. The locals had simply happened upon a cave filled with ancient artifacts. The cave is known as Xianrendong, which means fairy and human. Some people believe that the cave might be the home of fairies or some other magical beings, but the local officials knew they had found something important, and they called in archaeologists. Over the next decade, experts carefully excavated the cave. They found pieces of pottery, stone tools, ornaments made from deer teeth and animal bones. But the most interesting items were definitely the bones with markings on them. At first, the scientists were puzzled by these bones. After all, they had never seen anything like them before. To learn more about these bones, archaeologists sent them to a lab where they could use powerful microscopes to examine them in detail. Using scanning electron microscopes, they learned more about the markings. They realized that each marking was a small fracture on the bone caused by somebody hitting it with a sharp tool. By studying the angles and patterns of these marks, they figured out how people made them and what they were using to make them. They also used high-powered X-rays to look inside these bones and see what secrets they held. They peered inside a reindeer bone and saw a piece of quartz nestled inside. Someone had put this piece of quartz into the bone while it was still soft, probably while it was being used as a tool. They examined another bone and discovered the imprint of a bamboo strip. People may have wrapped this bone in strips of bamboo to make it easier to carry. One of the most amazing things the team discovered was the amount of collagen left on some of these bones. Collagen is a protein that holds our bodies together. It gives our skin its elasticity and strength. It's what keeps our joints strong and flexible. As we age, we lose collagen, and that's why our skin wrinkles and our joints get stiff. But these bones were thousands of years old, and yet they still had collagen on them. Somehow the prehistoric humans had managed to keep these bones preserved. Scientists are still trying to figure out how these people managed to keep collagen on these bones. But they think it has to do with the way these people lived. They were hunters and gatherers who traveled constantly. They couldn't stay in one place for too long because they would run out of food or water. And since they were always on the move, they never built permanent homes. They just made temporary shelters out of wood and hides. And since these shelters weren't very sturdy, they probably weren't suitable for storing bones. But somehow these people managed to keep their bones clean and safe. They kept them hidden until archaeologists accidentally found them. Now, these bones have taught us a lot about prehistoric life. We've learned that these people weren't primitive or unintelligent. They observed, they questioned, and they sought answers, just like we do. They paid attention to the world around them, and they tried to understand it. They wondered why the sky was blue or why grass was green. They asked questions, and they looked for answers. They weren't afraid of the unknown. They didn't think the world was flat or that the earth was the center of the universe. They knew that the world was round and that the sun and the moon and the stars were just big balls of gas far away from Earth. So the next time you feel like your life is meaningless or that you read just a small fish in a big pond, remember the people who lived in Xianrendong. Remember that they were just like you and me. They were curious and intelligent and compassionate, loved and they laughed and they cried. And they left their mark on the world just like we do. The first part of this episode can be found in Part 2, Episode 3. Check it out after this. Now let's get into it. Between about 1600 and 1046 BCE, somewhere in what is now northern China, there existed a powerful state known as the Shang Dynasty. At its peak, the Shang controlled a huge swath of land, dominated their neighbors, and prospered due to trade along the Yellow River. And at the center of their power sat the king. He lived in a magnificent palace, ruled over his people, and most importantly for our story today, performed rituals to the gods to ensure the continuation of his power and the prosperity of his state. Each morning he would gather his court, make offerings to the Jade Emperor and other deities, and receive omens from the sacrificial remains of pigs, cows, sheep, and occasionally humans. The omens he received were cryptic and up to interpretation, but were critical to the health of his reign. If the omen was good, then it meant that the gods favored him and his dynasty. If the omen was bad, however, then he had to take drastic measures to avoid divine wrath. And because these sacrifices were so important, the Shang kept detailed written records of each one in the form of bones. You see, the Shang kings didn't just read tea leaves or watch pig entrails. They cracked open animal bones to gain insight into the future. It started with them placing a question before the gods, typically about their rule, then making an offering and waiting for an answer. After carefully breaking the bones, they looked for patterns and shapes within the cracks, which were then interpreted by priests to determine whether or not the gods were pleased with the king. In fact, these divination practices were so critical to the Shang that they even conducted them on turtle shells. However, bone was much more common because animals were sacrificed far more frequently than turtles, and thus the bones became a primary source of information about the Shang dynasty. Together, these bones are known as the oracle bones and are considered the earliest surviving example of Chinese writing. They are also a fascinating window into how the Shang viewed their world, and how they tried to interact with the supernatural to shape it. When reading the oracle bones, there's a lot to consider. There is the obvious fact that they are ancient and therefore valuable historical documents, but there is also the reality that these are literal pieces of history. The oracle bones were discovered alongside thousands of other artifacts like pottery, tools, and weapons, all of which help us better understand the Shang dynasty and their world. For instance, some of the bones were found alongside human remains, suggesting that these particular rituals were performed during a funeral. Other bones were found near doorways, suggesting that the ritual took place in a shrine or temple. And yet others were found in mass, suggesting that they may have been part of a larger collection used by a single priest or a diviner. All of this helps paint a more complete picture of how the Shang interacted with the supernatural. When conducting rituals, there is the obvious fact that the Shang were interacting with the divine. But there is also the reality that these rituals were embedded in their everyday lives. The oracle bones were not just used to gain insight into the future, but to confirm what the Shang already knew or suspected. For instance, in one case, the Shang king asked if his sister would bear a son, and the bones indicated that she would. This was likely done to confirm what the king already believed, and it suggests that the Shang saw the gods as a way to confirm rather than change their fate. This is further supported by the fact that the Shang often used the oracle bones to settle arguments or disputes. In one case, two rival noble families argued over the identity of a particular animal. The oracle bones were used to settle the dispute, and the decision was ultimately left up to the gods. This suggests that the Shang saw the gods as a way to resolve earthly problems, but also that they did not expect the gods to intervene in every aspect of their lives. It's almost like the Shang had a personal relationship with the gods, similar to how one might pray for guidance in their own life. The Shang were clearly invested in the rituals and took them very seriously. But they also seem to have approached the gods with a sense of familiarity and even casualness. Sometimes the Shang would even make fun of the gods or argue with them. This is evident in one bone where the king asks the gods to stop making him ill, to which the gods respond that he has caused his own illness. This kind of banter suggests that the Shang did not view the gods as untouchable or unapproachable, but rather as part of their everyday lives. The Shang's relationship with the gods was complex and multifaceted, just like any other relationship. But perhaps the most interesting thing about their relationship is that it was a two-way street. While the Shang certainly respected and revered the gods, they were not simply passive recipients of divine favor. They argued with the gods when they were unhappy, bargained with them when necessary, and even made fun of them when the situation called for it. In many ways, the Shang's relationship with the gods was similar to their relationship with each other. They were equal parts respectful, argumentative, and playful, just like a family. We have seen how the Shang interacted with the gods, but what did the oracle bones reveal about the Shang themselves? What do these ancient pieces of bone tell us about the people who lived during the Shang Dynasty? The Shang were clearly a complex and multifaceted society, and the oracle bones reflect that complexity. These bones cover a wide range of topics, from mundane matters like the weather to more serious issues like war and famine. They also provide insight into the Shang's religious beliefs, political system, and daily life. One of the most interesting things about the Shang oracle bones is the fact that they were written on bone. This is significant because bone was not the traditional surface for writing. Instead, the Shang used tortoise shells, metal sheets, and even human bones as a writing surface. Bone was likely chosen because it was readily available, easy to work with, and could withstand the test of time. It also provided a unique challenge for the Shang scribes, who had to develop new techniques and tools for engraving and interpreting the cracks. This led to the development of a unique style of writing that was adapted to the oracle bones, which eventually evolved into the more familiar Chinese writing system. The Shang oracle bones also provide insight into the political system of the Shang Dynasty. The bones show that the Shang king was not only a religious figurehead, but also a political leader. He made decisions about war and peace, appointed officials, and managed the affairs of the kingdom. The oracle bones also show that the Shang had a well-developed bureaucracy with officials in charge of specific tasks and responsibilities. This suggests that the Shang were a highly organized and efficient society. One of the most alarming things about the Shang oracle bones is the frequency with which the Shang performed human sacrifices. The bones show that human sacrifice was an integral part of Shang religion and was used to appease the gods, celebrate victories, and ensure the prosperity of the kingdom. This is particularly disturbing given the gruesome details that are sometimes included in the bones, such as the method of execution or the number of victims. It's important to note that human sacrifice was not unique to the Shang and was practiced by many other cultures around the world. However, the sheer number and brutality of the sacrifices described in the oracle bones is truly disturbing and provides a glimpse into the dark side of Shang religion. Despite the darkness of some of the oracle bones, there are also many examples of the Shang's kindness and compassion. The bones show that the Shang made offerings to the gods for the health and well-being of their people. They also show that the Shang had a strong sense of community and were willing to help those in need. This is particularly evident in the many bones that contain requests for rain. As the Shang understood the importance of water for the health of their crops and the well-being of their people, overall, the Shang oracle bones provide a fascinating glimpse into the people who lived during the Shang Dynasty. These ancient pieces of bone show that the Shang were a complex and multifaceted society. The deep connection to the natural world and a strong sense of community While there are some disturbing aspects to the Shang culture, such as their use of human sacrifice, there are also many examples of their kindness and compassion. The Shang oracle bones are a reminder that ancient cultures were just as complex and nuanced as modern ones, and that it is important to study them in all their diversity. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Make sure you check out the first part of this episode, which can be found in Part 2, Episode 3. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you're notified every time we upload a new video. We've got all kinds of amazing episodes coming up that you won't want to miss. So click that subscribe button and join us on our journey through ancient history. Hi, this is your host and you're watching this channel. We've all marveled at ancient cave paintings and pondered how our ancestors managed to tame fire or created the first crude tools. But have you ever stopped to wonder about something much more subtle? Something that didn't need a sharp mind or strong body to accomplish? Something that only required a little creativity and some spare animal bones. Have you ever thought about how they wrote with bone? These fragments, some no bigger than a fingernail, contain an astonishing amount of information. And the way the characters were made will make you think differently about how writing works. The process was deceptively simple. Using a thin needle or sharpened piece of bronze, they would prick holes into specific areas of the flattest surface of a bone. The arrangement of the holes along the edge of the bone forms a series of patterns. Each unique pattern represented a single character from their language. It wasn't an easy task. For one thing, getting each hole exactly the right depth was difficult. If the hole was too shallow, the pattern wouldn't be clear, and if it was too deep, it could go through the other side and mess up the next character. This method was so precise that it took a lot of practice to master. And these weren't just random patterns either. They had to be memorized and reproduced perfectly if they were to be understood. But why bones? Was there some special quality about them that made them better for writing than wood or stone? The answer lies in the very nature of bone. Bones aren't just rigid structures that give our bodies shape. They are living tissue, constantly breaking down and being rebuilt. This means they can be reshaped over time by carving or scraping. But perhaps more importantly, they are highly durable and resistant to decay. In fact, a recent study found that ancient DNA can be preserved in bone for hundreds of thousands of years. Now, we don't know exactly how long these bone inscriptions would last, but given what we know about bone preservation, we can estimate that these tiny pieces of writing might stand the test of time for tens of thousands of years, maybe even millions. So when we look at these bones, we are not just reading a simple form of writing, we are reading life itself, in all its hope, fear, triumph, and failure. The cracks in the bones represent the eternal struggle of humanity, to survive, to conquer, and to record our stories. These pieces of bone offer us a window into the lives of those who came before us, allowing us to connect with them on a deeply human level. They remind us that despite the vast gulf of time that separates us from our ancestors, we share many of the same hopes, dreams, and fears. So let us take a closer look at the bone inscriptions and see what they have to teach us. When the archaeologists first discovered these bone inscriptions, they were baffled. How could such delicate markings have survived for so long? And how could they possibly decipher them? It turned out that the key to understanding these bones lay in the way they were used. The people who created these bone carvings were practicing a form of divination known as scapulomancy. To put it simply, they believed that the bones could reveal the future by recording messages from the gods or spirits. They would place the bones or tortoise shells on a fire, or bury them in the ground, and then read the patterns that emerged. Of course, this practice is not unique to ancient China. Divination is one of the oldest forms of human expression, dating back to the earliest days of civilization. The ancient Greeks practiced a form of divination called haruspices, in which they examined the internal organs of sacrificed animals to predict the future. The Romans practiced a similar form of divination called hepatomancy, in which they focused on the liver. And in many cultures, including Native American cultures, fortune-telling through bones or other natural objects was an integral part of religious rituals. In fact, the ancient Chinese weren't just using bones to communicate with the divine. They were also using them to record historical events and important information. For example, in 1976, Archaeologists discovered a set of tortoise shells that had been inscribed with the Chinese zodiac signs. These signs, which are still used today to determine compatibility and fortune in Chinese astrology, were likely recorded on the shells as part of a divination ritual. Similarly, another set of bone carvings discovered in 1984 contained records of important dates and events from Chinese history. These included the accession of a new emperor, a solar eclipse, and a great flood. These carvings served as a kind of ancient newspaper, providing us with valuable insights into the world in which they lived. For example, by studying the bones, historians have learned that the ancient Chinese kept detailed records of everything that happened in their empire. The frequency and variety of the inscriptions suggest that writing was an everyday activity. It's not just something that was done for important documents or ceremonies. This helps us understand the evolution of writing and literacy in China, and provides us with a rich source of information about daily life in ancient times. But the use of bones for writing wasn't limited to the Chinese. Throughout history, people have used a wide range of materials for writing. From the clay tablets of ancient Mesopotamia to the papyrus scrolls of Egypt. However, the advent of paper and the printing press revolutionized the way we record and distribute information. With the printing press, books could be produced quickly and cheaply, making literacy and education more accessible to the masses. Paper became the dominant writing surface, and books replaced scrolls as the primary means of storing and transmitting knowledge. Today, we live in a digital age, where writing is done on screens and stored on hard drives. Bone inscriptions, though fascinating, are often seen as relics of the past, something that we only study because they are so strange and unusual. But the truth is that bone inscriptions are not just relics of the past. They are an integral part of human history. They show us how our ancestors used their imagination and ingenuity to develop new technologies and solve the problems they faced. In addition, bone inscriptions help us understand the development of writing and literacy, which are fundamental to the spread of knowledge and the progress of civilization. By studying bone inscriptions, we can learn more about the history of our species and the challenges and triumphs that have shaped our world. We can also gain a deeper appreciation for the innovations and creativity of our ancestors. Bone inscriptions are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. They show us that no matter how difficult the circumstances may be, we always find ways to adapt and overcome. The people who created these bone carvings lived in a world that was full of uncertainty and danger. They faced natural disasters, wars, and disease outbreaks. Yet they never lost their sense of wonder and curiosity. They continued to explore the world around them and to seek out new ways of understanding it. One of the most amazing things about bone inscriptions is the sheer variety of them. There are all kinds of different ways to inscribe bones, and the possibilities are endless. This means that each piece of bone is unique and that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to deciphering them. This makes the work of archaeologists and historians all the more challenging, but it also makes it all the more rewarding. Every new discovery brings fresh insights into the world of our ancestors and helps us to reconstruct their way of life. So next time you see a piece of bone, don't just throw it away. Take a closer look. Imagine the stories it could tell if only we had the skills to read them. Who knows? You might be the one to uncover the next great mystery of human history. The invention of writing was a watershed moment in the history of our species. It allowed us to communicate ideas and information across vast distances and over long periods of time. It also gave us the ability to preserve our history and culture for future generations. Without writing, we would not have the rich cultural heritage that we enjoy today. The advent of writing led to the development of literacy, which is essential for the progress of any society. Literacy allows individuals to access knowledge and information, which is essential for critical thinking and problem solving. It also enables people to express themselves and to participate in democratic processes. Today, literacy is a fundamental human right and a key to success in the modern world. The legacy of bone writing is evident in the way we write today. Modern writing systems may be more sophisticated, but they are rooted in the same fundamental principles that were established by our ancestors. Whether we are writing on paper, stone, or screen, we are following in the footsteps of those who came before us. They laid the foundation for the written word, which has become an integral part of human civilization. Bone inscriptions are a reminder of the ingenuity and creativity of our ancestors. They show us that they were not so different from us, and that they faced many of the same challenges that we face today. By studying bone inscriptions, we can learn more about ourselves and our place in the world. We can also gain a deeper appreciation for the richness and complexity of human history. So the next time you come across a piece of bone, take a closer look. It may not seem like much, but it could be hiding a wealth of knowledge and wisdom. Who knows? You might be the one to discover the next great insight into the human condition. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button and subscribe for more content like this. And thanks for watching. The year is 2000 BC. You are an ancient shaman living in Anyang, China during the Shang Dynasty. Your day begins with the rising sun, but soon you're bustling about your home, preparing for an evening ritual. Tonight is one of the darkest nights of the year. It's a perfect time to commune with the ancestors and get answers from the gods about the future. As the sun sets, you light a fire outside your house. Soon other villagers gather around with their offerings for the spirits. It's time to practice divination, to seek guidance in a world where the line between the human and the divine is terrifyingly thin. In the flickering firelight, you see an old piece of cow scapula, or shoulder blade, lying on a flat stone. It's been used for many rituals before. Tonight, like many other nights, you will carve into this bone to receive messages from the spirit realm. But tonight is different. This night, the fate of your village may be decided by what you carve into the bone. Take up a sharp piece of flint and begin to etch into the surface of the bone. For the Shang people, the night is divided into two halves, each dominated by a different celestial body. First there is the moon, which waxes and wanes over the course of 12 days. And then the sun, which moves across the sky every day, casting its light on the world. So first you inscribe your question for the moon. Will we have a successful hunt tomorrow? Then you carefully place the bone into the fire so the flames can lick at the surface and burn away the impurities. When you pull the bone out, you look for cracks, breaks, and other markings left by the fire. The pattern of damage tells you whether the answer to your question is yes or no. If the flames had not touched the question you asked, that means the moon is neutral on the matter. Now you wait. Wait for the moon to pass from the west to the east, and the sun to set before you ask your next question. As the night progresses, other villagers come up to add their own questions. Will the queen bear a son? A young couple asks, eager to start their own family. You don't know if they know that their question has already been answered. The prophecy spoke of a great king who would rule the Shang people into a golden age, king born under the light of the new moon. But that prophecy also foretold of a usurper, someone who would betray the bloodline and take the throne by force. Will this child be the great king, or the prophesied traitor? The woman clutches her husband's arm. Her question goes unanswered as the flames turn from orange to red, then purple, then black. The sun dips below the horizon, and a cold wind blows through the village. The moon has passed from the west to the east. It's time to ask the sun. The villagers shift uncomfortably as the temperature drops. While the moon is seen as benevolent, even helpful, the sun is more capricious and dangerous. Many of these people don't even want to speak their questions aloud. They just write them on the bone for you to ask for them. But you feel a pang of sympathy as you read the words. Will my brother return from the war? There has been fighting on the borders of the Shang kingdom lately. Rumors say that entire companies of soldiers have been wiped out by the northern tribes. Some people don't even want to know if their loved ones are alive or dead. What good would it do to prolong the agony when death seems inevitable? You ask the question anyway, because to not ask the sun would be worse than hearing the truth. The sun takes the form of a tiger, its eyes burning bright orange in the darkness. The tiger snarls, and the hair on your arm stands on end. The creature takes a step forward, then leaps at you. You scream as the tiger pounces, but when you look down, you see it's only a dream. The fire has burned low, so you use a bamboo stick to poke at the coals, sending sparks flying. One lands on the bone, scorching the wood. You jerk your hand away as the smell of burning flesh fills the air. You weren't fast enough. This is bad. You've angered the sun with your carelessness. The villagers murmur nervously. Now the sun demands respect. To anger it is to invite misfortune. When you finally work up the courage to look at the bone, you see strange markings where the spark landed. You didn't carve them, nor did the fire make them. No, this is a sign from the sun itself. The lines twist together like vines and leaves. They seem to writhe and squirm like worms under a rock. You know instinctively that the sun has spoken. You translate the markings for the villagers. Your brother is dead. His company was ambushed by a neighboring tribe. He died bravely in battle. The woman collapses to her knees, sobbing. She knew the risk when her brother volunteered to fight in the war, but she still hoped against hope that he would survive. You put a comforting hand on her shoulder. Another question is burned onto the bone. Will the northern enemies attack? This one was asked by the village elder. He is a wise man, but his sight is failing, and he cannot see the signs in the sky like he used to. You understand his question, though. Fears the worst, and you do too. The tiger snarled earlier. It's been growling louder each time you've asked it questions. Now its message has become clear. Winter is coming, and with it, the nomadic tribes from the north will bring their horses and chariots thundering down the mountains. They'll plunder the villages and steal the Shang's tribute of bronze and gold. You spend the rest of the night answering questions, but the others aren't as important. The fates of lovers, the health of children, the success of hunts. All of these questions go unanswered as you anxiously await the arrival of the sun. With each passing moment, the tiger grows hungrier. As dawn approaches, the sun becomes less fierce, and the villagers begin to drift home, taking the bones with them to keep safe. Soon, it will be daylight, and the rituals must stop. You shiver in the morning chill, wondering what the coming year will bring. The Shang kingdom is prosperous now, but the prophecies foretell of great turmoil ahead. Will your people survive the coming darkness? Now it's your turn. Ask the gods a question, and receive your fate in the form of a tarot card. Will you brave the cold tonight to pray to the ancestors? Will you hear the whispers of the dead? Will you learn the truth of your past? All of these secrets lie dormant within the bones, waiting for you to uncover them. Hey there, everyone. Today we played as a shaman during the Shang Dynasty in ancient China. If you liked this episode, please subscribe for more historical tales. We'll see you next time. The flickering firelight danced in the shaman's eyes, his face a mask of soot and shadow. The year is 12,000 BC. His tribe has gathered for their most important ceremony, the one they've been preparing for all year. It's a night of magic and mystery, of life and death, when the veil between the worlds is at its thinnest. And he, the shaman, is about to unlock the secrets of the universe. His tools are simple: a bone, a fire, and a stone. But what he's about to do will change the world forever. He places the bone down, takes a deep breath, strikes the flint and steel until sparks fly, then brings the fire to the bone. Slowly at first, then with growing intensity, he begins to drill a hole right through the center of it. The air grows thick with anticipation. The tribe leans in, their faces a mixture of awe and terror. When the hole is complete, he lets the fire consume it, turning the bone into a makeshift torch. Then he leans in close, his eyes gleaming with otherworldly light. What he sees, what he's always seen, the spirits moving through the fire. The patterns and symbols they make, these are the answers he's been searching for. They're a message from the gods, a revelation, the key to understanding the world. With shaking hands, he reaches for the stone. In his trance, he carves the symbols he sees into the stone. Each stroke is a prayer, each curve a plea to the spirits. He is translating the divine message, decoding the language of the universe. The flames leap higher, reaching towards the heavens, and the bone cracks with a sharp snap. The sound echoes through the night, seeming to come from a distant realm, a world beyond our own. And there, in the crack, just as the shaman predicted, a single word appears. At first, just a rough sketch. Then with more carving, it becomes clear. The shaman gasps, not in fear, but in wonder. The answer to the question that has plagued mankind since the beginning of time, the answer to the mystery of existence itself. The shaman falls to his knees, overwhelmed with emotion. He looks up at the sky, his eyes filled with tears, and whispers, "Thank you." The tribe erupts in cheers, their voices echoing the shaman's wonder. They have waited for this moment for so long, and now it is here, the birth of knowledge, the dawn of understanding. The shaman rises, his eyes shining with newfound wisdom. He looks at the tribe, his people, and knows that he must share what he has learned. He gathers them around, and with the stone in hand, begins to teach them the symbols he has carved, the language of the gods, the very essence of creation. As the sun rises, painting the sky with hues of gold and crimson, the tribe practices the symbols. They carve them into trees, draw them in the dirt, imprint them on rocks. They are eager to learn, to understand, to connect with the divine. But as the day wears on, some begin to falter. Fearful whispers spread through the crowd. They don't want to anger the gods, to disturb the balance of the universe. The shaman, sensing their unease, steps forward. He knows that this is only the beginning, that the path to enlightenment is not easy, but he is willing to guide them, to lead them through the darkness. He looks at the stone in his hand, the very embodiment of the divine message, and speaks, his voice strong and steady. We must not be afraid. We must embrace the power within us, the power to create, the power to shape our destiny. We are the children of the gods, and we have the ability to shape the world around us. As his words echo through the clearing, the tribe stirs, their eyes widening with newfound determination. They are ready to take the next step, to embrace the power that lies within them. Together, guided by the shaman, they delve deeper into the mysteries of the symbols, eager to unlock the secrets of the universe. But the shaman knows that the journey is far from over. There are challenges ahead, doubts to overcome, and many more secrets to uncover. But with each step, with each carving, they move closer to enlightenment, closer to understanding their place in the grand tapestry of existence. And as the sun sets, casting long shadows across the land, the tribe stands united, ready to face whatever comes next. For they are the children of the gods, and they have the power to shape their destiny. Welcome to my channel. This is the story of how reading bones became a superpower. It's me, and let's jump in. Once upon a time, in a place where the earth meets the sky, there was a king who ruled over his people with wisdom and grace. Now this king wasn't your ordinary ruler. He had a gift, a unique ability that set him apart from everyone else in the kingdom. See, King Ahab could read the language of the bones. Now, I'm not talking about those fortune tellers who can predict your future by feeling the shape of your palms. I mean something much more profound, a connection to the whispers of the ancestors carried on the bones themselves. But how did he do it? Well, that's a tale as old as time. One day, long, long ago, when King Ahab was just a young prince learning the ways of the world, he stumbled upon a secret that changed everything. His people, the Inca, had a tradition, a ceremony so sacred it echoed with the spirits of their past. Every full moon, the shamans, the keepers of their spiritual wisdom, would gather around a crackling fire and perform a ritual unlike any other. They would take animal bones, carefully selected for their strength and purity, and with tools made of flint, they would etch messages onto them. But these weren't just any messages. Oh no. These were pleas, desperate cries to the gods, begging for guidance, protection, and blessings. Then, with smoke rising like prayers to the heavens, they would break the bones, scattering them into the sacred fire. Now, you might think that would be the end of it, but you'd be wrong. For it was in the breaking of the bones that something truly remarkable happened. The Inca believed that when a bone cracked, it revealed a message from the gods, a hidden pattern within the fracture that held the key to understanding the future. Intrigued and eager to learn, young Ahab observed these rituals, soaking up the knowledge like a sponge. Under the guidance of the shamans, he learned to read the cracks, to decipher the language of the broken bones. He learned that each shard held a piece of the divine puzzle, a clue to understanding the whispers of their ancestors. But here's the thing. Reading the cracks in the bones was no easy task. It wasn't something anyone could do. It took a keen eye, a sharp mind, and a pure heart. And as Ahab grew older, his abilities became evident to all. He could interpret the subtle shifts in the patterns, the hidden meanings encoded in the breaks. He could see what others couldn't, hear what others couldn't comprehend. In time, he became known throughout the land as the one who could speak to the dead, the one who could unlock the secrets of the bones. You see, back then, people didn't have cell phones or Google to answer their questions. They looked to the heavens for guidance, to the stars for direction, and to the bones for wisdom. The king wasn't just a ruler. He was a conduit between the earthly realm and the spiritual one. When the people had questions, when they needed help, They turned to the king. What should we plant? Which animals should we honor? Should we go to war or seek peace? All these important decisions were made based on the king's interpretation of the bone inscriptions. Imagine the pressure, the weight of your entire kingdom resting on your shoulders, on your ability to understand the will of the gods. It was a heavy burden to bear, but King Ahab took it upon himself without a shred of complaint. Each morning, as the sun painted the sky with hues of gold and crimson, the king would gather the scattered shards of the previous night's bone-breaking ceremony. Holding the bones in his hands, he would close his eyes, breathe deeply, and listen intently. Wasn't looking for words or sentences, but for patterns, shapes, and symbols hidden within the fractures. It was a form of divination, a way of gleaning insights from the seemingly random. Picture this. You're in a vast hall, lit by flickering torches, surrounded by your royal court advisors and generals, all waiting with bated breath for your interpretation of the bones. The fate of the kingdom hangs in the balance as you reveal what the gods have to say. It was a moment of truth, of clarity, when the mundane met the mystical. And with each crack that appeared, the king saw not just a break in the bone, but a break in the code. He saw guidance, warnings, even prophecies, all etched in the very essence of the shattered bone. But let me tell you, it wasn't always easy. There were times when the patterns were faint, when the whispers of the gods seemed distant or unclear. And during those moments, the king drew upon his own inner strength, his own connection to the divine. He meditated, he prayed, and he sought solace in the ancient rituals. He knew that understanding the bones wasn't just about intellect, it was about intuition, about bridging the gap between the seen and the unseen. As the years went by, King Ahab's reputation grew. People from neighboring kingdoms came to him for advice, for help in navigating the twists and turns of their lives. Some came seeking love, others hoping for prosperity. Some wanted to know if their journey was fated to succeed, while others just wanted a bit of comfort in uncertain times. Whatever their reasons, the king welcomed them all, treating each person with the same kindness and respect. He never used his gift for personal gain, nor did he exploit the hopes and dreams of those who sought him out. Instead, he served as a beacon of light, guiding those in need with the wisdom gleaned from the bones. And so it went, generation after generation. The Inca kings kept the tradition alive, learning the sacred art of reading bones. They understood that it wasn't just about predicting the future. It was about understanding the present and shaping it according to the will of the gods. They saw that every decision, every action, had consequences, not just in the here and now, but also in the days to come. They knew that the language of the bones wasn't just a collection of cryptic messages. It was a roadmap, a guide to living in harmony with the rhythms of the universe. However, as time marched on, things began to shift. New ideas took root, challenging the old ways. And eventually, the tradition of reading bones fell into obscurity. The once revered practice was forgotten, left behind like an old worn-out book in a dusty attic. The connection between the Inca kings and the divine through the language of the bones was severed. Fast forward to today. Imagine you're an archaeologist uncovering an ancient site, brushing away the layers of history to reveal something truly remarkable. A collection of bones inscribed with an unknown script. As you piece together the fragments of the past, you start to decipher the language of the bones, realizing that you're holding in your hands the whispers of a forgotten era. You see, the ability to read bones might have been lost to time, but it's not entirely gone. There are still those who hold the knowledge, those who understand the secrets embedded within the cracks and crevices of ancient bones. It's a rare and valuable skill, passed down through generations, kept hidden from the prying eyes of the world. And now, you find yourself at the center of it all, on the brink of uncovering a mystery that has remained unsolved for centuries. You feel the weight of history on your shoulders, the responsibility of preserving a legacy that almost slipped through the cracks. With each inscription you decipher, you bring the voices of the ancients back to life. Hearing their stories, their hopes and dreams, their struggles and triumphs, you realize that you're not just an observer of the past, you're a participant, a link in the chain of human history. And as you continue your work, you know that you're not just unearthing artifacts, you're unearthing a way of life, a culture, a belief system that once thrived. You're bringing the past into the present, sharing it with the world, ensuring that it's never forgotten. And in doing so, you become a storyteller, a keeper of cultural heritage, someone who understands the language of bones and the stories they hold. And that's the story of how reading bones became a superpower. Did you enjoy this episode? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more. Thanks for watching. See you next time.